everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Riding the Wave, a dedicated space for mental health awareness and suicide prevention, with the goal of fostering understanding, breaking down stigma, and providing valuable resources for those navigating mental health challenges. Joining me today is the Skelley family.
Hi.
Thank you guys for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about your son, Owen, your brother. I want to first ask you, what are some of your favorite, when someone asks you about Owen, what's your favorite thing to talk about?
He was amazing. He is an amazing young man. A little bit of history about him. We started our family in Burlington. Owen was born April 14th of 2006, and from an early age, some memories and some things about him. He had those curly hair, that curls in his hair, always full of energy. He would wear us out because he was always wanting to be on the go, wanting to be outside. He was attached to his brother's hip all the time, carrying his little monkey stuffed animal that he always had with him and he was known for. But he was always wanting to be wherever his older brother was. He was wanting to be with him all the time. And Owen he got interested in sports at an early age. The Chicago Cubs were his favorite team, MLB team, and he had his favorite players. And then when they went to this World Series, he was really pumped about that. Growing up, he tried different sports. He really held on to baseball mainly. When he was in middle school, he did some wrestling, he played football, he played baseball, and that was his love. He was on traveling teams, got interested in that, and he was always on the go with traveling baseball throughout Iowa and all over. And then going into high school, Owen, he mainly stuck with baseball, but he also played football, and he did some wrestling, but his love was baseball. By far. He lived and owned right field. If he could be anywhere but home, that was his second home. We have a lot of memories, and my daughter Stella and my wife Jennifer can touch on some memories. One of the memories I have was we go to Canada every so often fishing, and in Canada the ice melts off the lake around first or mid part of May. And we go up and fish around the first couple weeks of June, and just watching Owen, by the way, he loved to be just in his underwear. No matter where we were, he loved to be in his underwear, go out to get the newspaper or the mail in the driveway. And, we kind of, watch it because we know if the neighbors see him, and they might not like it, but he loved to just run around in his underwear all the time. And anyway, he would strip down and jump into the water. And that lake water was so cold, but it was so fun to watch him do that. It's not advised, but it was so much fun, and that's one of the many memories. And I could talk about the memories for hours, but that was one of my fondest, favorite memories is watching him. He would fish, and then he'd get tired of fishing, so then he would just jump in the 45-degree water or whatever and do his thing.
Joe touched on a lot of Owen's great characteristics. One thing that I think about Owen is he loved food, and he loved baseball, and he loved his friends and family, and he really loved his dog Donald, who he called Aaron. Owen was a kid who was full of love and energy from the day that he was born, and he had the biggest heart and was always willing to help anyone. And he was a really, really great kid.
There's no reason why he even called him Aaron. He would nickname different things or people, whatever. He would have a nickname for. Yeah, he would just, for no reason at all, he would just come up with nicknames.
Owen always gave nicknames to people or things.
Yeah.
For no reason.
Benny Charles.
Yeah.
And
Benny Charles?
Yeah. No reason. I don't know if it's a cartoon character or what, but he nicknamed Stella Benny Charles. So.
Yeah. A memory that I have that I remember a lot is just like after practices or just on a random night, like we would just sit in each other's rooms and we would just watch TikTok together or like YouTube or Netflix together and just talk about life. And that's just like one thing that I remember a lot because like we were present and like even though we weren't doing a lot, we were just still there with each other and just making memories just by just being in the house and like being together in the room. Yeah. And we did that a lot. And that's one thing that I remember and that has stuck with me.
That's a good memory to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that. So will you guys talk about a little bit about why you started the Big O Foundation and what, for people that maybe don't know your story, what does OS 14 mean and what's, your mission?
So the Big O Foundation, when Owen passed away, March 3rd of 22, someone had come up with the idea of starting a foundation. I don't even think it was us, but it was a good idea to bring awareness and the messaging of such an important topic. Mental health is not, it's something that we had no knowledge about in general. I say it sometimes when I talk to people that if you asked me years ago in high school if I would go listen to a speaker on mental health, I would respectfully decline and say, and because I would think to myself, no, my family's fine, my friends are fine, the people I know are fine. But it's more, there's more to it than just not feeling fine or coming across as being fine. People put on a front that they're fine, and that's in Owen's case. He did put on a front. But we started the Big O Foundation because we saw the generosity from the community. We felt and saw how gracious people were and how they're wanting to help get the message out, because people know that it could happen. It really could happen to anybody. Just speaking of Owen, we look at Owen's life and now we look back and we're like, oh, there's some signs we missed, some things that weren't obvious to us at the time, but there's things that stand out now that it's like, oh my gosh, if we had just learned more, taken the time to learn about mental health, it maybe, our family path could have gone differently in a better way. But we started the foundation because we don't want other parents, siblings, friends, the communities, people really feel it when something happens to somebody, and it's a pain that doesn't go away. You learn to tolerate and deal with it, but it's a pain that doesn't go away. And if we can face our fears and be in front of people and talk, we'll do it if we can help prevent that from happening to others. So that's how we first started that foundation, and we have a great board that interjects their opinions and puts in time and research and makes calls and in person, over the phone, emails. They're very generous with their time that they take away from their own families to get the message out and awareness.
I'll touch on the OS 14 logo. So we're the Big O Foundation, but we use OS 14 for our logo. And we came up with that logo. Actually, Tad Gates came up with that logo for us. And the OS is Owen Skelley, and the 14 is his birthday. He was born on April 14th, and he always used the number 14, or at least he tried to get the number 14 whenever for his baseball number and his football jersey number. So that's how we came up with OS 14.
And do you see signs of 14s everywhere?
Yes, we do. And it's pretty cool when you see those signs.
We're filming this on the 14th, by the way.
Yep. And one sign that happened like 6 months after Owen passed away was we went on a cruise, and we were checking in on the cruise ship, and it was my family, our family, and then there was another family that was with us, and the other family got their floor number, and their floor number was 3. And then we got our floor number, and we were on 14. So, and you're right.
You guys were going together.
And, I mean, we were together with this other family, but they got put on floor 3, and we got put on 14. And I felt like Owen had a hand in that by making sure that we were put on his floor.
Oh, I love that. Do you see any 14s randomly, Stella?
Yeah. One thing that like I look for a lot is like I'll just like pick up my phone and like the time will just be like 4:14, and that's like that really motivates me to like get through the day with like a smile, just because I know that he's there and like guiding me through. But like just like on the streets and stuff, like if I see a 14, like I just know that like he's pushing me through the day and like he's there with me.
Yeah. Well, and have you started driving yet?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you've noticed I always see an OS 14 sticker at least once when I'm out. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to see the stickers, and even when it's nice out and you see people walking and they have the OS 14 shirt on. I mean, it's really cool. Like Joe said, like the community has shown us a lot of support, which has been amazing, and that is a great way like for them to show us support. We love seeing the car stickers and the t-shirts and the hats. I mean, it's just warms our heart that we know that people are thinking about him and remembering him.
Yeah. Well, from the very beginning, for those listening, I lost my friend Dylan to suicide, and actually I think Owen's funeral was the 1 year of Dylan's passing. And so they were almost exactly a year apart. And so I just remember there are other families in the community who have lost children by suicide, and some of them are not as open to saying that is, what took their child's life. Mm-hmm. And I have respected you guys so much, as well as Dylan's family, for being so open and honest about how that happened. Was that like something that you just did without thinking, or was that something that you wanted to talk about? Did you always know you wanted it to be like, this is how he died, so that it was prevention, or does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we kind of talked about it actually from like the very beginning when we were writing Owen's obituary. When we were working with the funeral home, they said that we should just say, what happened.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to talk more about suicide. Joe and I talk about this a lot. We never have had the conversation with our 3 kids. We never talked about mental health, for that matter. And I think, that's where we have to start.
Yeah.
And I think, there's the myth that the more you talk about it, somebody else is going to go do it. Yeah. And it's wrong. Like, we need to talk about it. I want people to know that a bad day doesn't equal a bad life.
Yeah.
And you might have a bad day, but it's going to get better.
Yeah.
You said it was 1 year almost to the date of Dylan. Our oldest son and Dylan were on the swim team together. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to Dylan's visitation, and I had to leave the visitation to go out in the hallway because I just saw how much pain Dylan's family had, and I couldn't be there in there at that time. And I remember we didn't really talk to our kids about mental health much, but after Dylan's visitation, we did sit down with Stella, Boyd, and Owen, and we said to them, "You guys see how much pain that
Mickey and Kevin are
gonna have.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to live with the rest of their life. You guys do not see this." And the kids are like, "Yeah, we see it." And it's kind of one of those things that, okay, well, they heard me say that, so we're good.
Yeah.
Didn't really elaborate on much. It is a topic that might be uncomfortable to talk about, and
gets brushed under the rug.
It does.
Oh,
it gets brushed under the rug. That's a perfect way of saying it.
Yep.
But it's a necessary conversation that has to be continuous, not just a one-time lip service, 2-sentence thing. It has to be an ongoing conversation throughout the rest of your life. The sooner you learn about it, the chances are you're going to be able to help others and learn about yourself to know what your own signs are and what other people's signs are, and what to do if you do recognize there's an issue that needs to be addressed, what to do and how to help yourself, how to help the other people. But when I was younger, it was required to take PE, physical education. It's required because, you need to learn about your own physical health, how to be healthy, how to take care of your body.
Yeah.
So it's mandated to take PE. In PE it was mandated there was a CPR course. It was like 1 week long.
Say that when you...
And the CPR course, they had a mannequin, taught us how to do chest compressions. So if you come across somebody in distress, you at least know the basics of how to help that person.
Right.
It's mandated to take driver's ed, to learn the rules and the safety, how to be safe on the road, going slow, going faster, or whatever. And it's mandated to take that before you take that next step and get behind the wheel yourself. But I guess what I'm getting at is PE is not taught by an Olympic champion that is really in tune with what their body, how to take care of themselves and their health and all that.
Yeah.
PE is not taught by a professional athlete. CPR wasn't taught by a general surgeon. They didn't bring somebody in to do this, or EMT. It was taught by the gym teacher. Mm-hmm. The basics. Driver's ed wasn't taught by Dale Earnhardt, a race car driver, a professional. It was taught by just normal people that have some insight on how to handle some of these things. And where I'm getting at is mental health needs to be mandated. It's on the upswing. It's getting worse with social media. There's some good things about social media. You want to research mental health, you Google, you get on the internet, and you can go that route. You can also call a friend. You can FaceTime a friend. And so social media and the internet and technology can be good, but it's also leading towards bigger problems. The more we lose that touch of making our own decisions and having those intimate conversations, one-on-one, eating dinner or whatever, the more we lose touch of that, we're losing just in general. And but anyway, I really think that it should be mandated that there's a short course in school on mental health to identify if you're personally struggling with any anxiety, depression, whatever it may be, confusion of any part of your life, or you're questioning any part of your life. There should be a mental health basic course on how to handle that, how to identify what you're going through, identify someone that you're passing in the hallway, a colleague at work someday, or whatever it may be, how to identify and what to do once you identify this person might be struggling. Had we known that Owen was struggling, and there was some signs, and we can talk about a couple of those, but had we known that this was something we needed to talk about and address, like I said, things could have gone a different path for our family. But because we've come down this path, it's led us into starting this foundation and potentially helping others is our hopes. So.
Well, you mentioned earlier, and just mentioned again, that there were signs that you didn't recognize until later. Do you want to talk more about that? Sure.
So Owen left us a 10-page letter that he had been typing for 5 weeks. There's certain things we have figured out only because he left us that letter. Okay. In the letter, he said he felt like he was a burden. He didn't want to be a burden to anybody. As far as signs, he always kept his emotions inside. We didn't see him get angry hardly at all. And if he did, he almost like he recognized it and stopped right away. So he kept his emotions inside, his stress and frustrations. He would text. He might have texted. I don't know if he texted his brother and sister and his mom, but he would text every so often. He knows I kind of get stressed out with my job, but I don't bring my job home. As far as I don't get angry and take it out on the kids. I do contain my own stress, and that's probably a characteristic Owen got from me, is just kind of balling it up and not talking much. But Owen would ask me from time to time, Dad, if there's something ever bothering you, you can talk to me. I still got those text messages, and I would say back to him, because I just thought, wow, he's extra special asking me that kind of thing. And so I would ask him, I would tell him back, hey bud, if you got anything you ever want to talk about, let me know. And so he kept a lot of his, whatever he was going through and struggles, he kept it inside. But then there was some times where it's almost like I'd catch him off guard, and let's say he's laying in bed and I walk in, and I would say to him, hey Owen, are you all right? And it's almost like I startled him, like, oh gosh, my dad senses that something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And he just didn't feel comfortable telling me. But it's almost like he went to great lengths and effort to keep it inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a terrible characteristic that I think he got from me. There was one other sign, and I think it was about 1 or 2 years before he passed away.
2
years before he passed away, we go to bed early, like 8 or before, and Owen would go to these practices and extra practices for baseball and workouts, and he'd get home 10 or a little after, and every night he would come in and say, Mom, Dad, I'm home, and he would tell us he loved us. And he would always, there might have been 5 days out of 365 days in a year that he wouldn't do this. But every night he would come home and say, Mom, Dad, I'm home. He'd give his mom a kiss. He'd give me, here's this 13, 14, 15-year-old young man giving his dad a kiss on the forehead almost every night. And, well, one night I was laying there, and it got to be, he came home, said, I'm home. And then he went down to his room, and it got to be about 11-something. And it's one of those things where you just kind of sense somebody's in the room, and I kind of opened my eyes. It's about 11-something. And he was in like he ran 10 miles. He was out of breath. And so I said, hey, bud, what's wrong? You all right? And he says, I can't get these thoughts out of my head. I don't know what it is. And so, not knowing anything about mental health and not being proactive and learning about it, I said, okay, I'll go down and lay in your bed with you. So we went down there, laid. We were looking at the ceiling, laying on our backs, and I was talking to him, and he was talking back, and he was just saying how his mind was racing, and he couldn't get to sleep because his mind was racing. And me not knowing anything about mental health, that could have been a sign that he was struggling. And I myself wrote it up as a nightmare. I didn't even ask him about it. I don't remember asking him about it the next day. And these are things, the signs that I'm talking about, these are things we kick ourselves
Mm-hmm.
with. Why didn't we just start the conversation and really keep it going, and trust us when we say this. Our family is really an open book. Our kids know that we expect you to make mistakes, and we accept it, but we want you to learn from it. And so our kids know they can come to us. I think even Owen said it in his letter, something about that. He said we were good parents and this and that, but
Mm-hmm.
how all three of our kids know how supportive we would be regardless of what they were going through. And so that was a couple signs that we missed. Him balling up his stress, him not showing emotion. He would be over apologetic.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be times, and he was strong as an ox. I mean, strong. He worked on that. It wasn't handed to him. He worked to become really strong, and he sometimes didn't know his own strength, I guess. And he would go down to his room. And one night in particular, I heard the door slam downstairs, and my kids know that I don't like, don't slam the doors. And I heard the door slam, and it was tense up at night, so I was already in bed for 2 hours, and I didn't even have to text him. Within 5 minutes, I had 4 texts from him apologizing 4 times. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm like, all right, bud, no problem. Good night. And then a minute later, Dad, I really am sorry. I shouldn't have slammed that door. And I'm like, hey, don't worry about it. Within a short period of time, I had like 3 or 4 apologies. It's like, man, it's not even that big of a deal. You slam the door, just don't do it again. But he really cared about others and disappointing his parents.
Empathetic.
Very empathetic. And, I don't know if those are signs, but that was Owen. He really cared so much about others and not so much himself.
Right. He cared more about others than he did himself. There was one other sign as I look back on things. I didn't think it was a big deal, but now that I think about it, I think it is a big deal. In January, his grades started to drop. And I didn't really think much of it when it happened because I knew that school wasn't Owen's favorite place to be. He was always a straight A student. So when they started to drop, I didn't really say much to him because I didn't want to be that mom. And I didn't want him to think I was disappointed in him because they were dropping. And I mean, when I say dropping, like instead of getting straight A's, he was getting a couple of A's, a couple of B's, and like 1 C. He wasn't failing by any means. But in hindsight, I think that was him, just not caring about himself and letting things go. And I wish I would have talked to him more about it. I wouldn't have gotten angry at him, but again, it might have helped me start a conversation with him about mental health. I think this is all about talking, and we have to talk to our kids about how they're feeling and what's going on in their life so that they'll talk back.
And getting good grades did not come easy for him.
Nope.
He worked so hard at getting good grades. He worked very hard at getting better at baseball and becoming stronger physically, and he worked really hard at that. But when his grades started to slip in January, that was about the time when he started his letter. And like Jenny said, his grade slipping was most likely a sign that we should have paid more attention to.
I mean, you don't think about that. That's not the first thing you think when, when grades drop. And I want all 3 of you and any other family going through a loss like this, you can do everything that's humanly possible, and someone with a suicidal mind will just keep trying. And it is, I know it's so easy to feel guilt and to feel like you didn't do enough. And something that I've talked to Dylan's mom about, which hopefully she won't mind me sharing this, but like she told Dylan, like, if he had been hospitalized once before, and she said, if you don't feel safe, crawl in bed with me and just lay with me. And he still didn't do that. He knew, especially because they're military, he knew the effects of suicide, but he was, in so much distress, you don't see anything else. So I know it's easy to blame yourself, and I'm sorry that you have to feel that, and So that's the reality of a suicide loss, unfortunately, is no matter how well you try to help others not blame themselves, it will happen,
Agreed.
unfortunately. From a parent's perspective, someone who maybe is, like you said, you weren't super open about the topic of mental health. What do you want parents that are similar in that mindset to know about losing a child?
We have always told our kids that the worst thing that a parent can go through is losing a child. And just take it for us, it's true. It's the worst thing you'll ever go through. Regardless of how you lose your child. It could be a cancer, an illness, or it could be like in our shoes, or suicide. It's the worst thing you can go through because it's permanent. Our kids we're not supposed to say goodbyes to our kids. There's should be the other way around. As far as what we could say to other parents, you got to have that you got to have a continued open door conversation with your kids, not just your kids, the people you work with. I mean, it shouldn't be a fragile topic, and there shouldn't be a stigma.
Yeah.
From the beginning of time, it was. People don't like to admit that they're having struggles or problems or whatnot. And I've said it in some times that I've talked, that you go back 50 years ago or 80 years ago, and if a young man is struggling, and if he happens to tell his parent, back then it was pretty acceptable to say, well, get your shoes on, go to school, and when you get to school, don't say anything to anybody because you're going to embarrass the family, or what, you're going to, be a disappointment.
Yeah.
It's all bogus. That's off the table. But that's kind of the stigma that's got to be broken nowadays. So what could be said to parents that have children? Doesn't matter if they're struggling with mental health. You got to have that conversation. You got to keep the door open and let your kids, let your colleagues, everybody around you know that, hey, I'm a safe person to talk to. I'm not going to pass judgment, but I'm here for you, because the alternative isn't acceptable. Suicide is not an option. There is help out there. There's opportunities to get help, and you got to keep an open mind. If you're opening up and saying, hey, I'm having some anxiety, episodes and spells. I'm feeling down and depressed. You gotta start by opening up and talking. You see somebody walking down the hallway with a cast on their arm. Why is it acceptable to everybody else in the school that, okay, they have a cast on their arm? Clearly something's wrong with their arm. They hurt themselves. And why is there a stigma around mental health? I mean, ultimately we all want each other to succeed and feel good. That we want their tomorrow to be better than their today. And so the conversation I would tell parents, the advice, let your child know that you're there for them. You would do anything for them, and to never think that they have to fight something and battle something on their own, because that is something that haunts me. Is I think about how many times Owen went down to his bedroom. How long was he struggling with his anxiety or his depression, and how many times, and it kills me to think about how many times he went down to his room and cried himself to sleep, and we weren't there for him. It really is. It destroys us thinking about that. and knowing that Owen is not alone. There's a lot of people out there that are in the same situation where they feel like they have nowhere to turn. But there is so many people you can turn to. The teachers, coaches. Owen went to youth Bible study twice a month, and there's so many. The pastor, there's the school administration. I am convinced that anybody in the school district didn't go to school with their primary focus to get out and draw a paycheck. They're there first and foremost because they want the kids that they're surrounded by to do good. Mm-hmm. They want them to succeed. The paycheck is second or third or whatever. But they're there. They pick that field because they want to help if you're in need of help.
Yeah.
It doesn't just have to be the school counselor. It could, all the administration in these schools, they do care. And so there is places to turn and seek help.
Yeah. And I mean, suicide is an epidemic. Mm-hmm. I think the more close-minded we are around the subject and the stigma around it, the worse the epidemic is going to get. I mean, we're not going to,
right.
It's not going to get any better until people start, like you said, opening the conversation, not just to their kids or their parents, but to coworkers, classmates.
And it's nice to see role models in society. To me, it's kind of like they're finally stepping up. You see athletes speaking up. You see musicians, because it can happen to anyone. It could happen to anybody that you think has it made. Robin Williams.
Ashley Judd. Was it Ashley?
No.
Naomi
Judd. Yeah, so it could happen to anybody. It doesn't matter what your status, what your walk of life is, well, anything. It
doesn't matter how much money you make.
No, that money doesn't
matter
buy
what
the
kind of
happiness.
house you live in.
No. It's all materialistic, all that stuff. What matters is what's your mental health is what matters.
Why do you think men's mental health has such a stigma around it?
I think
specifically like men's.
Right. Because I think, and I mean, I was raised this way too. I grew up on a farm, and it was always kind of in my head that, we're the rock, we're the fixers. If there's a problem, it ends with us, men. You see the commercials for the Army and this and that, and you read the books in history class in school. The men stormed Normandy, and the men fought the battles and put out the fires and fixed the problems. We got that stigma, that stereotype that, okay, if we got a problem, we got to fix it on our own. Owen's no different. Owen tried to handle whatever he was going through on his own. I don't think he knew how to handle it, but he also didn't feel comfortable. He didn't know where to turn. It's our opinion that Owen struggled, whatever mentally he was struggling with. We don't know really what it was completely. However, I've done a lot of thinking, reading his letter and this and that. I think he tried to shelf his thoughts on his depression, anxiety, or his mental concerns. He tried to shelf it or substitute by he went and worked harder at getting stronger physically, and he tried to work harder at and get better at baseball, and he almost tried to mask that he had some mental health struggles, and he probably thought that I'll feel better about whatever he's going through. I'll feel better if I just have some success over here. If I'm struggling here, I'll feel better about myself if I improve at this or that or whatever. But in the meantime, this isn't getting addressed. I'm convinced he tried to shelf his struggles. What he did wasn't impulsive. at all. He thought it through. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. We know he struggled. Now we know, not then, but we now know, just by reminiscing on his memories and the things he would say and the things he would do in the letter. It was clear his struggles had been going on for quite some time.
What, if anything, about Owen's story do you want to share the most to help other people? This could be towards men specifically, anybody struggling. Just what do you think is the most important part of his story that you really want emphasized?
If Owen's talking through to do, what not to do, if he could take back what he did, and he sees all this pain that we're going through, his friends, community, if he could see all this, what I think about this a lot, what would he say? And I think he would say that he made an irreversible bad decision. And like I said in the beginning, we expect our kids to make mistakes. That is the ultimate mistake. And I think Owen would say that. I made the worst mistake I could have made. And moving forward, I think he would focus more on that person in the mirror rather than trying to help. And I'm not saying it's bad to help others, but he would make himself a bigger priority. He's kind of like me. I mean, if there's something I needed to do and it would take me 2 hours to do by myself, or I could ask someone to help me and it'd take 5 minutes, most of the time I would pick the 2 hour route. I'm just stubborn. Owen was stubborn. I keep stress inside. Owen kept stress inside. I try to put on a front and not show that I'm angry, frustrated, mad. Sometimes I'll say it and whatever, but Owen did the same. And you gotta break that mold, that stigma, that eggshell. You gotta break that open and just. A month ago we were at the Jones County Fair, and a close friend of ours who had lost their son to cancer. A close friend of ours came up to me and we were talking and chatting, and he said, "Joe, I'm going to be honest with you. Do you want to know something?" I said, "Sure." He says, "All right, you're really lousy at asking people for help." I said, "I know. It's not even an insult. It's like, oh yeah, someone else is noticing that. I am lousy at asking others for help. There's times where Jenny and I we need some volunteers for this or that in the foundation, and sometimes I make the comment of, let's just do it. Everybody's got their own lives and their families. We try to handle as much on our own, but people want to help. If you're struggling mentally with depression or anxiety, people want to help you.
Yeah.
You just got to allow it. And it's so much easier said than done. You got to allow it. It's no different. It's just like me not asking for help, and it takes me 10 times longer if I did it on my own rather than ask for help. I got to do the opposite of what my friend said. I got to be more willing to ask for help. And
I also think that something that Owen would say if he was here was, I think he would tell people, you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others.
Yeah.
And Owen was very bad at that. He didn't take care of himself. I mean, he did physically. He always made sure he was working out. He made sure he was eating well. But mentally, he did not take care of his brain.
Yeah.
And so I think he would make sure that people knew you can't take care of others until you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
he was good at covering it up. Well, it was about a year after Owen passed away. I was in the kitchen, and one of Owen's friends stopped over, and I was having a breakdown talking to him, and I told him, I don't understand what happened. I don't understand this and that, and I said to his friend, I said, he just wasn't thinking. he just wasn't thinking when he and his friend said, Mr. Skelley, I don't mean to disagree with you, but I think Owen didn't stop thinking. I think he thought too much. He didn't know how to shut his brain down, shut his and relax. He didn't know how to shut it off, and just have that quiet downtime. And I think my wife is very similar. When there's something bothering us, we have a hard time sleeping or whatever, and I just think back to that night that Owen came into the room, and he was like he just ran a race, and I look back at that about how he couldn't shut his brain off and relax. But there's therapists for that. There's medicine that I now take to help me with that. But it took, opening up and saying, "Hey, I need some help," And when Owen passed away, there's people that we're pretty close with that came up to me and said, I never said this, I never told anybody, but I'm actually taking some medication for my anxiety. And I was like, I'm glad they shared that, but I think to myself, gosh, if Owen would have just said something, I didn't know my friend was taking medication. Nobody needed to know if Owen was going to be taking medication. It's not something you need to broadcast. But what you need to do is let others know that you need some help.
Yeah. How has this changed how, I guess obviously it changes your day-to-day life, but you said you're now taking medication. I mean, have you started, is everybody doing therapy now? Is, mental health more of a conversation every day? How has that changed?
The word mental health, those two words get said so much more now than ever before. There's actually a commercial on TV from U.S. Cellular, and I can't believe it because it's the opposite of what I would think U.S. Cellular would do, but I think a really good idea would be for people to put their phones down more and talk. Because to me, social media can be a good thing, but social media and the internet, it's like a nicotine. It sucks you in and won't let you go. And if you ask any kid at throughout the day, when's the last time you picked your phone up and looked at your phone? I bet you most of them, it would have been within the last 10 minutes if you ask them that question. It's something we can't even live without anymore. We used to go, when I was younger, we used to go out and find our fun. On a hot summer day, what could we do to have fun? Well, we would go out and look for our fun. Well, now, everything you need to pass time is in the palm of your hand. And technology is really taking a toll on life in general. We would encourage people to research and talk more about it. We need to get more speakers to come in and talk more. The school district, we're hoping that they're more open in the future to allowing the conversations, whether it's speakers or whatever it may be. What I tell some people that you never know what somebody's going through, and if you don't have the time to do research and read and whatnot, that at the bare minimum you should always take time for yourself. Know your limits, be encouraging to others, and always be kind to everyone, because you don't ever know what somebody else is going through. I can't even remember that Robin Williams quote, but it goes along something like, you never really know what battles someone else is going through, and you don't. Everybody has mental struggles of some sort, emotional, whatever, some to different degrees, but it's not just 2% of the population. It's the majority of the population. So why is it mandated to have the conversation in schools and some short courses that are mandatory on learning more about something that is becoming more of an epidemic.
Yeah.
You never know what somebody's going through, and at the very least, be kind to everybody, because you just never know.
Thank you guys so much for coming on.
All in all, we were very proud of him. Not proud of what he ended up doing, but we were very proud to be his parents, and it's our hopes that he's making a difference through not just us, the board, your foundation, but the community in general. Because of Dylan and Owen, we hope that the message is getting out there that people need to be more comfortable, open up and talking, and everybody else needs to be willing to lean in and listen and be an ear.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, now everybody that's not in the state of Iowa that gets our pamphlet and sees Owen's name at the bottom knows who Owen is and can learn more about his story. Thank you guys for being on.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
I appreciate it.
And we'll see you on another episode. Bye.
Bye.